Aaron Lewis from Liberty Brett Norfleet here with Tommy Lepore here from Hello, everyone. Welcome inside the Red Earth Production Studios for another edition of YBMcast, powered by Game 7 Baseball, Game7Baseball.com. Dave and Dave filling it up. The tournaments are out there, ready to go. Got some discounts going till January 7th. All those clubs, make sure you're getting your club discounts. Make sure it's done by January 7th. February 7th is the other deadline for your 3 for 30, 4 for 40, and 5 for 50. Dave and Dave do a great job putting these things together for you guys out there. Game7Baseball.com. Get your team registered. Get in those tournaments, and we will be out there. We're going to be live streaming some 14U championship games, and we always love to do our baseball trivia, giving away the baseball cards. Guys, I got a great panel here. That's Game7Baseball.com, but it popped in my head. I want to tell you about this. It was a lot of fun. I have today with us from Misha, Kenny Seifert, Doug Fessler. Guys, how you doing? Appreciate you coming on the show.
Good. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.
Doing great, Brian. Always appreciate being on this show.
And as always, our resident guru up there in the right-hand corner, Mr. Kevin Mulder. Kevin, how are you, buddy?
Doing great. Excited to be on.
Very good. Guys, when we were out doing some trivia, I'm talking to this 11U baseball team out of Arkansas, the Lindsay Dodgers, okay? We were giving away a box set of Pete Rose signed autograph cards, and I was hollering let Pete in, and but it was at the World Series, and that was our big to do. The trivia question was, how many hits did Pete Rose have in his career? And I'm thinking to myself, it's going to be pretty tough for a bunch of 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, right? This was the first time we asked the question, and this little kid goes, I think it was, 4,162? 62. Yeah, and he just rattled it off, 11 years old. I was like, did he just say that? Everybody's like hollering. He goes, guys, that's why we read books.
Yeah. I thought you were going to say that's how we get on these things real quick.
No, that's what he said. He goes, that's why you read books. I thought it was hilarious. So it's always fun being out there with the kids doing some trivia. But, hey, guys, we're going to talk a little high school baseball today. It's our prep baseball talk, and we appreciate having these gentlemen from the Missouri State High School Athletic Association on with us. Let's start it off. Just a few things. I'm looking through the website myself last year, and this is my own experience. And I saw the digital ticketing started in 2020, but I've had different places where in the playoffs and districts and stuff where I've paid cash at the facility. Is this the way it is across the board? Is it going to be some and not the other, or how is all the digital ticketing going here, guys?
Sure, I'll take that. Obviously, it came into place during COVID and really started and kind of. I don't want to say necessarily stayed. It really never. It didn't go away, but it's became more of a staple, and it is a staple at all our postseason venues after the district tournaments. That's the key. So districts have the option to use digital ticketing or not. And once you get to a sectional round, quarterfinal round, or the final site, then it's strictly all digital ticketing. One big reason, obviously, is you don't have to exchange money hands. Obviously the original thought why everybody went to this was the cleanliness of the money and handling money and this and that. For our venues, it's much easier using digital ticketing, just settling event settlements and money exchange in hands. It's all electronic. And so that's the main reason. There are, I would say in baseball, a district tournament, this is totally just a guess, there's probably a dozen or so out of all districts around the state that use the digital ticketing. Not many do. It's starting to get a little bit more, but I will tell you the positives for whoever's running the event. Obviously, it's much easier. You get your phone, computer scan done, you're good. People also purchase these online, and they do it at many venues. You go to a concert, Cardinals games, anything like that. Heck, I went to a Cardinals game this summer, and nothing was cash. When I went up to the concessions or anything. So, it's becoming that way. But Brian, it's a thing where there's still many schools that use cash at their district tournaments and regular season, but there's a few schools even around St. Louis area that's starting to do their regular season even digital tickets as well. So,
Wow. Yeah, because I went to one venue and I paid, walked at the door, and then I drove out to another. I was in my car. I went to hand them the cash, and they go, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're only doing." And so it was just, and I saw that on there. So I wanted to ask this and clarify.
Yeah.
So it's always better to check before you go to the venue, correct?
absolutely, yeah, and hopefully, most people are going to the districts because they're a parent or family member or something or affiliated with the school. I wish there was more out there like you that would just wants to go around to watch baseball, and but it's always good. You can always check our website and see who's doing the digital ticketing first. If it's not listed, then they're not doing it, and they're a cash site.
All right. Well, heck, Kevin can tell you, I went to 3 or 4 different district playoff games and whatnot. And honestly, the atmosphere, of course, we're in this kind of cradle, I think, of baseball here in the St. Louis area, and even into the district final or the sectional, that went into the sectional one. But the game between Francis Howell and Francis Howell Central, it was nuts.
Yeah.
The atmosphere was unbelievable there, and Sean Irwin over there did a great job. I think he had fireworks popping off, and it was big, and
Sure.
he had I really enjoyed what Sean Irwin did with that, the activities director there, in creating a real playoff atmosphere, creating an atmosphere for these kids, and something you don't necessarily see in high school, maybe with football, but have never seen with baseball. And I thought it was really, really a tremendous kick up for baseball in the state. Would you agree, Kevin?
Oh yeah, 100%. That was the best atmosphere I've attended at a Missouri high school baseball game. It reminded me of some of the environments I've been in down south. In my coaching career, recruiting, and reminded me of a Florida or Texas type thing. So it was really cool, and I know there was big success too over in Kansas City side. That Liberty North championship game was packed as well. So I know Vianney does a really good job as well. Those were a couple from this past year that saw a lot of success, at least in my opinion, in terms of having a great atmosphere.
Well, and you all bring a point to why I feel that the postseason venues, and I'm talking districts, are always held at one site usually, or at least the championship will be, is determined. A district tournament can actually be held at multiple sites in the first round to help with, especially in St. Louis where a lot of fields don't have lights, and can get games in. But usually your semifinals and finals are one side of a mission member school. That's when you get those great atmospheres, as well as sectionals and quarters. Those go to these same member school sites versus a neutral site where that couldn't happen. You're not going to be able to do those same things at the neutral site because it is a neutral site, and we're going through that with basketball right now. Membership's going to be talking about, deciding whether we want to continue with the neutral sites, which that's the only sport that really does it. baseball, softball, there's great atmospheres when you get to go to those, home venues. So I think that's a huge plus.
Absolutely.
I got a quick question for Doug and Kenny. When we're deciding who gets to host, how are those determined? Does quality of the facility play into it? Does it just, hey, I want to make a bid, or is it
Right.
some sort of rotation that is kind of equal? How does that process work?
Great question. And Kenny, you can follow up on this. It's really with I think it's every sport. Um, but our districts are determined by the ADs at each school. We have nothing to do with it. So once a district is formed, we select a site selection chair for the district tournament. So I might call you, Kevin, up and say, Kevin, you're the AD at so and so school. I need you to get the other 6 or 7 ADs within your district, and you all need to decide where you're going to host your district tournament at. And then you let me know. Now, are there certain criteria, a minimum criteria that has to be met? Yes. But as far as I will tell you, I know there's venues and people question all the time, why is it hosted here? Well, we have more seats. Well, go talk to your athletic director. Your athletic director decided to go here, and there's all kinds of factors into it. But we stay out of that as far as a MSHSAA staff assigning, of where districts go. So, Kenny, anything else on that?
No, you're spot on. And Doug, that is true for all sports, even in tennis. We're going to have a site selection chairperson. They're going to communicate with the schools. It's going to be majority vote. We understand that is going to bring its own elements to the table, especially when you get out into some more rural areas. Let's say you have a 7-team district, and 4 of those teams are from let's say the Wentzville, St. Charles area, and 3 of those teams are from the Columbia area. Well, guess what? 4 is probably going to outvote 3. But Doug and all of our other execs, and myself included, we do a great job then of communicating the next year. So let's say we have that same situation happen the next year with many of the same schools still in the same district. We will let them know that our expectation is the wealth is being spread. So that particular year, then the 4 Wentzville schools may travel to Columbia. But yeah, for the most part, it's majority vote wins, and it's up to the schools to determine where they want to play at.
Okay. There's some, and the thing of it is, I think if guys are being fair, that's just right to do. I mean, you can't expect somebody else to travel every year. I mean,
Right.
That's just.
And for the most part,
unless you're Kirksville or West Plains. If you're Kirksville or West Plains, I am telling you, gentlemen, you can come up with all the algorithms you want. Those 2 schools are traveling somewhere.
Yeah. Jackson, they come up to St. Louis a lot, Kate, and it just, it is what it is, But what I was going to say is, in districts, say in the St. Louis metro area where a lot of them are the same all the time, we prefer where if it gets spread around, but again, that's going to be up to the ADs, but it is fair to share the wealth, so to speak, and let other people host. But like Kevin mentioned, facilities will come into play, and especially with baseball, softball, the biggest thing, well, there's no place to sit. I said, so you're telling me around the whole stadium? Well, there's no bleachers. I said, well, maybe you don't want to. You could always bring your lawn chair and sit along the fence or stand or whatever. I mean, unless it's prohibited, but I haven't met anywhere it's been prohibited yet. But I will tell you, there's not many venues in the entire state that will hold enough people for a district tournament, a championship game of a district tournament. So whenever I hear that, I just like, hey, congratulations, you're going to have a great crowd, enjoy it, and no place is going to be able to hold your 500 to 700 people. Nobody has bleachers like that. They put them in place for regular season games, and they hold 100 people, maybe 200 at the most. So,
right.
What I've noticed, and I think this is smart in the ADs, a lot of times, in the St. Louis area, I know in Kansas City they went over to Creekside. They'll find the facility that has turf, and
sure.
the other thing I've noticed is a lot of schools are starting to upgrade their facilities a little bit. And just thinking back through my head where the districts were played last year, they were all at really nice venues, which is good. And that turf always gives you that flexibility of wiggle room with spring and the weather, and obviously
Well, as you
makes
know,
sense to have a facility to
yeah,
host.
I mean, if you have a turf field, you know your field's going to be used in the spring because all those schools that don't, they're calling you up saying, "Hey, we got to get this in. Can we play there?" So I know here in the Columbia area, our public schools, any small rural area around here does not have turf. By the end of the district tournament, everybody's coming to Columbia to finish up their districts. Nobody has turf, so
Well, a follow up question I have is, so we got the districts. How did the state championship? I know those are awarded like by through contracts or a certain amount of years. Do cities or parks put in a request and for a 5-year contract or whatever it is?
absolutely. Yep, that's exactly what happens. We have what's called an RFP process, or request for proposal process, and it goes out the year prior to the championships concluding at that site, and the venues and the cities, your visitors bureaus, they talk to their venues and they bid on it, and it's a total bid process. And I know it was at O'Fallon, and then now it's moved down to Springfield. Um, and that it is a 5-year deal. Now, COVID messed things up. The ones that got canceled in the spring, we granted them an extra year, obviously, because they didn't get to host. So it looks like it's really been 6 years, and I'm sure once that comes up, it'll be like, hey, why'd they get 6? And
Yeah.
6 years from now, we'll have to say, remember COVID. So, but that's exactly how it's done, and the it, we don't really determine whether it moves around. I mean, it is a financial look at an obligation that we do have to consider. But all in all, I know that in my short time here in the last 2 years, and Kenny, you can maybe speak on it more. We haven't just selected a venue just because of financial considerations either. It's a variety of reasons, but we don't necessarily ever have to go out and seek out venues and say, hey, can we play there, for our final site. Kenny, anything else with that?
That's exactly right. We obviously the financial package is a key, but we look at a lot of things, location of the state, and it's always that balance of how does the whole thing work out, and what measures the heaviest. So we take all those things in consideration. Here's an example: if everything is equal, and they never are, but let's say that we have everything is exactly equal, and we just got finished having a 5-year. We're finishing up a 5-year RFP with the Springfield area, and now here we are for an RFP, and we have Springfield and Columbia area vying again, and everything is exactly equal. Well, we're probably going to try to spread the wealth, and we're probably going to come back to Columbia. If everything isn't equal, then we have to look at how unequal is it, and where are we in regards to where we'd prefer to have it. Yeah, so there's a lot of communication, a lot of decisions that go into that.
That makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. And I want to do this, and both Kevin and I, we were coming off of the last two years. We were back down there again for the 2022 championship weekend, and honestly, guys, it was really daylight and dark from the year previous to this year, and how well I think everything moved and worked and did. I mean, because I know, and it's tough, not everything is always perfect. We get that. But I think you guys did a great job this year in bringing all those things together, because, I mean, I remember getting in my car the previous year at 1 o'clock in the morning and driving home, to St. Louis. So after the Zumwalt West game, but I thought it was really good. So what were some of the factors you guys looked at from the year previous and took into consideration for this past season?
Well, I did a lot of prayer and soul searching for the weather to be good. That's the first key component. But no, we also, and again, I was not in charge the previous year. Last year was my first baseball championship. So I appreciate the comments. I worked real hard to try to make it, good. And I wouldn't even say my own. I learned a lot from Lou Mazzacco, who ran it prior to me. I went off his pattern, but I did spread out the games a little bit more. So that the one thing, Kenny can speak with, we're getting ready for basketball championships. I did the same thing in basketball. A pet peeve of mine is I can't stand being behind all day, and you're just behind, behind, behind. I'd rather have a little lead time and have teams or somebody like yourself or whoever that's maybe doing the game on the radio or scorekeeping. A lot of times those people don't even get a break to go to the restroom, when you're doing just back to back to back. And nobody else cares. The fans don't care, but boy, the people that are running your event sure appreciate it. And without them, you're not running your event. So I tried to keep that in mind, spread things out a little bit, and it seemed to help the flow of the day a little bit as well. And to get started on time is a big deal. Now, you can't do anything about weather or what I'm going to call not boring games, but tremendously exciting games that go like we had this year with Southern Boone. I believe Fort Zumwalt East, when it went like 13 innings, you can't do anything about that. It's going to set you back a little bit. You got to do the best you can about, trying to catch up. But I try not to ever short any team or any coach because that's their time at their state championship. So if it means I have to stay there later, fine. If it means, a parent has to be there an extra time, fine. But it's about the kids. So, I'll always try to do everything I can to play every game that's scheduled. One great thing we had with the facility, we did have rain this year. It was in the morning but it was early enough when I got there. It rained hard. You wouldn't have known it from the field. It just drains great, and that's another thing. From as long as I stay with baseball and softball, I'll look at is the drainage of the field because that's what it's about. You can have I don't want to say I don't care, but people can sit in wet bleachers. It's hard to play on a muddy field, and for safety and everything else. So, I appreciate Kenny's help. Kenny helped me out a lot down there at state baseball, and we try to make it a well-oiled machine. And now that you said that, knock on wood, 2023 will probably be horrible, but we're gonna keep trucking along like it'll be great.
Doug, I'll add a little something to that, and I'll compliment you because not only did you do it for baseball in the spring, but you did it for basketball last winter. You always reevaluate when you have your championships about what went well, what didn't go so well, and kind of a common thing we had talked about through the years was the whole we got to stay on schedule, but we're scheduling our games so close that when we get done with the championship, we're rushing kids to the handshake line. We're rushing to get their medal presentation. And the minute we're finished with the trophy, the medal presentation, they got to get off the field or off the court so we can get ready for the next game. Well, guess what? That is a once in a lifetime moment for those kids and those coaches in that school community. So what's the problem with instead of scheduling our basketball games on every hour and 45 minutes, we schedule it every 2 hours so that we can do the proper presentation. And when it's over with, they can take pictures until the cows come home. It's their moment. And then we can move on to the next game. And so what happens is you may have some of those games that ended quickly. Maybe we didn't have a lot of whistles. Maybe we had a running clock. Okay, we're going to be sitting around twiddling our thumbs. Go get some popcorn, go to the restroom. It's going to be a while before the next team gets up and warms up and we get ready to play. But that's okay. And Doug has done a phenomenal job in getting everyone's buy-in to make sure it's okay if we have a little idle time. What we don't want to do is be rushing people because this is the moment of their life.
I concur with that so much, Doug, and kudos to that because me, as a reference, I was aware. This was Fort Zumwalt East's first trip to the Final Four. It was their first district championship, their first trip to the Final Four. That's a moment that those guys, and as everybody sitting here on this panel knows, it's hard to win in sports. It's hard to get there. that travel, especially in high school baseball, when you're talking about public schools, you're dealt the hand you're dealt, the kids that are in the school, and depending upon talent and what you have and the coaches and getting that, those opportunities are few and far between. So I love the fact that it's the thought process about that moment for the players, for the coaches, and giving them that opportunity. This is what it's about, right?
Right.
100%, because that's for a large majority of these athletes. That's going to be the pinnacle of their athletic career for most of them. So this is should be celebrated. So that's phenomenal work by your guys' organization.
Absolutely, guys. Let's get into this real quick, and we know this is always a tough one, but I always like to ask this, and I know you're still finishing up. You got we're a little ways. You're in the middle of the basketball season. You'll have the basketball championships, Doug, and stuff. But going into the 2023 season, wow, that took a lot to get out, man. That's because we're not there yet. Anywho.
Yeah.
Class and district assignments, do you guys see any big changes coming on the horizon? Does it look like we're going to be pretty status quo? What's the sense here?
Yeah, really don't see any big changes for the class and district assignments. You really see that when there's a lot of shifts in enrollments. I think we've settled down enough from COVID where people are back in school, enrollments are set. Are there going to be a few? Absolutely. Will that shift a couple? Absolutely. But there's baseball still strong. There's a lot of schools at play. You don't see contrition where schools are dropping out, not playing baseball anymore. So no, I feel like we have 6 classes, all pretty strong. And yeah, I don't see much movement at all. Not trying to defray the question. It's just I don't see there probably be a lot of movement at all.
I got a quick question as it relates to kind of the St. Charles area. With a new school like North Point, which is going to end up being one of the larger schools in the area, and then they start out with a majority just a freshman and a sophomore class. How do you handle a case like that where they're maybe just starting to compete on the varsity level? They're going to end up being one of the main schools from an enrollment standpoint into a larger class. Do you go into where they kind of phase in, or do you just drop them right where you think they're going to end up being from an enrollment standpoint?
They're getting thrown into the fire. learn the hard way. No, I mean, and that's kind of the AD or the school. They choose every year at the beginning of the school year. They have 2 choices. They can register in a certain sport for regular season, and they can register in a certain sport for postseason. So most people do regular and postseason. In that instance, they may choose just to do regular season and not do postseason. But if they do register for postseason, and Kenny can jump in with this too. Here's what I do when I look at class and district assignments, and this is the honest to God's truth, and nobody understands it until you're right here in front of this computer. There's one big map with a bunch of dots on it. And yeah, do I know where St. Louis is located? Absolutely. Do I know where Kansas City? I know where the main cities are located, and maybe it's because I'm just young in this, but I don't know where that's Francis House Central, that dot, or that's now, like Kenny said, I can tell you where Kirksville and West Plains are at because they're by themselves in the middle of nowhere, but in the other schools, I don't look at who's in what district and is that a rival or not. We all look at geographic location and numerical balance within our districts, and that's the way our bylaws are written. That's the way the membership has written out to divide the districts out. And so if wherever people are at, they're in clusters. Somebody said, well, why does so and so got to be in the same district all the time, or this and that? Well, it's because you can't pick up and move your school to another spot. Now, Kevin, when you said, well, North Point now will be joining, can that move some things? Absolutely, it can. Depending on what class they fall in, if that class, let's say, already had 8 teams in a particular area right there, I won't put 9, and we'll try to do everything we can to avoid that. So things may shift a little bit, and a team may drop out and move, to the east or south or north or west, just depending on where they're at. But absolutely, that could happen. So, but they do get thrown in just really where their enrollment falls, and so what will happen, Kevin, though, is this year their enrollment they might fall, and anybody that's watching from Northport, I'm just throwing out an example here. They may fall in class 2 this year because they only have, say, 2 classes. Next year, if they add a third class when they're juniors, they may jump up to class 3 or even 4, depending on how big that class is. But it goes every number goes totally off enrollment.
Right.
Got it.
Anything else?
No, that's Doug. You said everything that needs to be said. Good points.
That makes sense because if it's going to be based on enrollment, you have to wait till they're fully functional as a freshman through senior class, and that makes sense to me. And
our bylaws are written just to follow up with that, just so everybody knows. We taught geographic balance, geographic location, numerical balance, and then we have the 2.0 factor, which basically means in any class besides class 1 right now in baseball, and I'll explain why. Nobody in that class is 2 times larger than anybody else in that class enrollment wise. So class 1, that would be dang near impossible. We'd have 20 classes of baseball if we did that in every class, because in class 1 there are some class 1 schools that participate in baseball with an enrollment of 45 kids, 50 kids. Well, if that was the case, let's just say it's 50 to make it an easy number, double that size is 100. Maybe you'd have a whole class with 20 schools in it, maybe at the most. Well, it's just not fair and geographic. Well, I won't even say it's just not feasible to do. So that's why kind of class 1's kind of the catch-all. But classes 2 through 6, nobody is 2 times larger than any enrolled class within there, unless they're a private school and the championship factor comes into play. So,
putting you guys on the spot, what is the largest school in our state enrollment wise? Kenny or Doug, do you have an idea?
Wow.
Kenny, go for it.
I'm going to go for it, I guess. But I will tell you, obviously, you guys know that when we do our calculation on enrollment numbers now, the senior class is not calculated. It's freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. So for the most part, when we talk about numbers in our office, we're talking about 75% of your school population, because 1/4 of your classes are not calculated in that population. But I think somewhere around, we got the schools around that 1,950 mark, and that would be in the top, or in the freshman, sophomore, and junior class. So if you actually talk about the 4 classes when they start school that next fall and they add the freshmen in there, you're probably talking somewhere around 2,700 students.
Wow.
And we do have, Doug, if I'm not mistaken, our smallest school enrollment in the state is 36.
And I believe it depends. Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's maybe a little Breckenridge or something, I believe. Yeah.
Right.
So,
jeez.
Quite the disparity.
I'm rooting for those guys.
They're pulling people out of that.
The kids at Francis Howell have more students in their English class than what Breckenridge has in their high school.
That's a
Wrap your
truth.
mind around that one.
Jeez. Now, it's curious. I'm spitballing this, but I'm looking at the scheduling. We've been working with Scott Harris, who is the activities director, and I'm not trying to put anybody out or whatnot, but it's curious what I saw this year. They moved Holt into the Central Division. Whereas the South is usually the bigger schools, the Class 6 schools, and it's not that because I think Liberty's a Class 6, so it may just be moving. But would there be some anticipation of a school maybe dropping in class, or because they know the enrollment, and so he might be moving schools around based on it? He may not know, but maybe more of an assumption or a thought process to maybe this might happen.
Or are you talking about scheduling regular season games?
Yeah, the GAC. Yes.
Yeah, he could be. The enrollment numbers are all out there on the website.
Right.
So there's a link to everyone, and he may be looking at them. I know, ADs try to do that and guess, who may be in the class or who they may see. And I'm only guessing and speculating, but yeah, I mean, you kind of do that as an AD and seeing and again with new schools, or I will say there is a few schools in the state. Now I'm not sure about any in St. Louis, but I know in Kansas City they're actually shutting down. There may be in St. Louis too. I mean that'll affect things too, and it doesn't. There's not a drastic shift, but there is some movement. When that happens, and just like I mentioned with private schools, if you have if they win, they have a championship factor that moves them up. When you move somebody up, somebody must come down. So, it all factors in.
I have a kind of a hot button question that is kind of started to dominate the college landscape, and as you guys know, it always kind of trickles down. Has Missouri made a stance on NIL, name, image, and likeness? I know that some other high schools, other states have put that into place with their high schools. I'm not promoting or I'm not taking a side either way. I'm just curious. I know that it will come to the forefront, and you guys will be forced to make a decision at some point.
Yeah, Kenny, you want to do it, or you want me to handle it?
I'll touch on that a little bit. So to answer your question, Kevin, yes, I have been on more Zoom NIL meetings in the past 3 or 4 weeks than I really care to be in. But it is a conversation we have to have. I mean, it's the reality of what we're dealing with. So when we started this school year, because of not really knowing about it, we just kind of said, okay, for right now, we're going to hold the fort, and everything that our student athletes are allowed to do is going to fall under the amateurism award, which has been in our bylaws for years and years and years and years. But obviously we're having these discussions for a reason. And that reason is as wonderful as that is, it's probably not specifically addressing what we're getting ready to deal with through this NIL. So we are leaning on experts around the country that have experiences in this. And I can promise you that our office will be looking at doing something to provide better guidance in our bylaws when it comes to the NIL, because there's so much of it that we don't know. I mean, it's been pretty interesting to learn of all the things that are out there, because one of the problems we have is when we talk about NIL, the first thing that comes to every one of us, our minds, is that high school kid who's getting $1 million deal to go to USC and play football, right? But the reality is that is such a small percentage of NIL opportunities that exist out there for more of the normal athletes, and that was eye-opening to me. But what happens is we focus on the extremes, we don't focus on the norms. So you can just have a decent high school athlete that maybe made contact with their local car dealership to do an ad that really rewards them much of nothing besides some recognition. So there are many different degrees to it, and it's been really interesting to learn and to hear about that whole process. But Kevin, we are going to have to we're going to have to get on board and come up with some language that at least gives our schools and our administrators and our coaches better guidance on how to direct their kids and make sure that they don't put themselves in a position where they become eligible.
Yeah, it's certainly something that we're all learning about, because I don't think anyone quite has this thing figured out. But getting to watch the college model from afar, there is certainly some potential pitfalls coming. There's some benefits, some so it's an interesting thing to to watch from afar, and I don't envy your guys' position there.
No, not at all. Speaking of those things, I saw a few rules changes from the NFHS that have coming up, and I want to see where Misha's going to bring those things into. I'm sure there was just a quick one. I'd never even heard of the bat, but they decertified the 33-inch Stinger bat Missile 2, and that was on the website there. I never heard of the bat, so I don't know if that's something that's even going
I haven't either. I mean, I'm not even going to bring it out. I mean, I hadn't either. It'll be one of those things where if it gets asked, then we know it's not allowed. But I hadn't. It's sometimes that comes from parts of the state, because again, that's an NFHS rule that we just don't have to deal with.
Gotcha.
The biggest change, I think, will be the jewelry rule. Now jewelry, basically you can wear it, and you don't have to have a medical accommodation. You don't have to. You can, if you want to wear a chain with a cross, wear a chain with a cross. So, it's kind of just clean that up, and it'll make it easier for umpires not to have to fight with it and stuff like that. I think it'll happen in softball too. It hasn't yet, but it may have came out too. So that's the biggest one, jewelry, and then the other main one is really, and it's more of an understanding with the pivot foot pitching. The pivot foot will now, determine whether you're coming to the plate in a set position or in a pitching position, depending on how the pivot foot is. So I think those are the two big changes. Nothing what I would call earth shattering, but things that probably need to be done. So
you haven't banned the shift yet, Doug?
What's that?
You haven't banned the shift yet? You're going to see how this plays out in Major League Baseball before you
we haven't. That hasn't necessarily came across yet. So we don't. What's funny is watching throughout the games. You don't see a lot of that. That hasn't made it even. It didn't even make it all the way down to the high school level. I don't think so. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that. Thank goodness.
And Kenny, you can speak to this because you deal with the officials, and as an umpire in high school, I mean, honestly, for me as an umpire, I could have cared less if the kid was wearing a necklace or a bracelet, something like this. And to me, it was. I remember watching a young man. His sister had made him a bracelet, and it was one of those, you couldn't just take it off quickly. It was just, they made him cut it off. And I'm thinking to myself, that's just, it was silly in my opinion. And I think there's bigger things to deal with than whether or not some kid's wearing a bracelet or, has a chain around his neck and whatnot, as far as, and I understand safety concerns. Don't get me wrong. That's withstanding.
Right.
But, I think there was bigger fish to fry, and I'm kind of glad to see this. As for an official, I don't want to deal with silly stuff like that. Is that something you're hearing?
Well, absolutely. And Brian, that's in all sports. I am currently a college basketball official, so I have to deal with the same things. So one of our college basketball rules is a player cannot wear a sock that has the NBA logo on it. Now, I understand why that is a rule. And I understand that probably is something that needs to be enforced when the Kansas Jayhawks are playing the Duke Blue Devils on Big Monday. I get it. But when Columbia College is playing William Woods or Missouri S&T is playing Maryville, I'm anticipating there aren't going to be a whole lot of people that's going to pass judgment on me in regards to whether a player has an NBA logo on their sock or not. And I think that comes within the beauty of officiating. Officiating to me is very similar to being a police officer. We have laws and we have rules, but we have to understand what they are intended to do and why. The example I always use: speed limit on the interstate is 70 miles an hour. Now, how many of us break that every day? Probably almost all, right?
Yes.
How many of us get pulled over? Very, very little, unless that number is so far above the speed limit and so far, you're driving so much faster than everybody else that you become unsafe. And at that point, they probably need to pull you over and make their decision from there. On the same token, let's say there's a snowstorm. Let's say tomorrow hits us and the speed limit on the interstate is 70 miles an hour. But because the wind's blowing 40 miles an hour, we've got people on the interstate driving 40 and 45 miles an hour. And you come flying down there at 71. Is there a chance you're going to get pulled over and get a ticket? Yeah. Not just because you broke the speed limit by 1 mile an hour, but your actions are now unsafe. And so as an official, and I know I'm kind of getting off in the weeds here, but as an official, those are the decisions that we have to make. Hey, that particular item, does that meet the uniform requirement or doesn't meet the uniform requirement? And if it doesn't, am I going to make that the hill that I die on today? Or is that something I can handle another way? Maybe have a conversation with coach after the inning's over with, or maybe send a special report to the MSHSAA office and let MSHSAA deal with it. And the beautiful part of officiating is everybody's belief system is a little bit different. Many officials are 100% by the rule book. It doesn't matter. It's in black and white. Other officials are, yes, it is in black and white, but that is a guide with which we need to go out and govern and officiate and manage this game so that it's safe, number one, and that it's fair for both teams. And so, no, Brian, that's a great question. And that becomes the challenge because no matter what bar, wherever you put that bar, everyone's view of it is going to be just a little bit different, and therefore their enforcement's going to be a little bit different. So I get officials that will send me an email. And in fact, this is funny. I just literally got one yesterday. It had a photo of a team that was wearing an illegal home uniform. And in their title was, "We will never have consistency in our state unless we all officiate this the same way." Well, guess what? I've got 2,250 basketball officials, and I'm not real smart, but I'm smart enough to figure out not every one of those 2,250 people are going to do it exactly the same way. We have to live with those choices. We try to be as consistent as we can, but at the end of the day, everybody's going to have their own little flavor on it as to what they think needs to be enforced and what isn't.
Yeah, and I love what you said there, consistency. If we could find some consistency in safety and fairness, I think those are the two keys that most everybody deals with. Whether the person is wearing a piece of jewelry or a logo on a sock, has it changed the outcome of the game or made somebody unsafe? And I think this is the side I sit on. And there are letters to the law as when you're out there, as you said, we're officials. I'm not making the law. I'm not making the rule. I'm there to make sure that the teams competing against each other are both competing on that level. And that's the goal of an official. And if you can be as unobtrusive as possible in making sure the guys are doing that, I believe you've done your job. And the more I see sometimes officials get involved way too much into a game, and this is again, as you said, Kenny, there are guys that agree with this and don't agree with this. Let the players play the game. Let the coaches. If a coaches get excited, I think it's competition. So you have to be aware of so many factors that are involved in a competitive situation. And I think that's really where the difficulty, in my estimation, comes in, and being able to judge situations in a fairest manner.
Sure. Absolutely. Spot on.
So, guys, we've got, the next year coming up. There's one last thing I want to touch on, and we'll get you out of here. I know we're going a little bit. But there was an article I saw from the NFHS, and I don't know if Misha is dealing with these things, but it's talking about, and I think this is where the things go to that are difficult in times, but they got an emphasis on sportsmanship in high school activities, extending to online behavior. Is Misha getting involved in this, or is that just staying with the schools, the athletic directors, and how are those things, are they factors into this? I don't know if you've seen this article or whatnot, but just like to have your thoughts on this.
I'll touch a little bit on that first, just because from an officiating standpoint. So for the most part, Brian, it is a local school issue when it comes to let's just say the chatter that goes on out there. Now, if it brings into the official side of it, where not so much the fans are the fans, but we do monitor making sure that our coaches in our schools are not using the social media platform to make comments derogatory towards our officials. But all that other chatter that doesn't involve our officials, it's really a school issue.
And I'll just kind of, I mean, you can only control obviously what you can control, and I understand that. But I want to say too, and I think our coaches have done a better job. But I want to stress, when I was coaching, you only allow your players or your team to do. You only allow them to do what you want them to do. Okay, and I think it's a lot on our coaches to educate and teach, the kids about. Remember, you put something out on social media, it's there forever. I don't care if you hit delete, it's there. And those all coaches know that, but I think it's become more prevalent, obviously now with all the social media platforms, and because that's really what we're talking about. The kids will be kids out on the field, court, whatever, and obviously the sportsmanship is a huge issue, but I believe it starts with our coaches, and if our coaches can act responsibly, be a leader, usually you see the kids right behind them do that, and I always appreciate the coaches that if something happens, I can go up to that coach, say, hey, coach, or give this coach a call. Will you take care of this, and it is done with. We do not want it, and I want to stress how important that is, that it starts with the coach. Those kids, I've always said we can't control their home life, and you can't. But a coach is a huge influence on a student athlete. They are, and they're such an influence, more than we will probably ever know. You all probably know because you have coaches you remember back. Kenny and I have coaches that we remember back to, and they were influence on our lives, and those guys and ladies are such a big part of kids' lives. It starts there, and if we can be role models as coaches, our sportsmanship will get a lot better.
Kevin, your thoughts? I'm going to give you the last word on this because you're coaching from a long way back and seeing the growth of social media throughout your career, correct?
Yeah, the world's certainly changed, and this is a conversation I used to have with my teams. I would tell them every single year, you pull up ESPN.com and you would see a high profile, a student athlete losing a scholarship, getting kicked off the team, his draft stock plummeting because of something that happened on social media, a stupid comment, a picture with drugs or alcohol or a member of the opposite sex or something like that. And, I'd always tell them there's always, a guy with the video camera on, now they have the video cameras on their phone. You got to be well aware where, and I know this rule isn't necessarily going into that, but that is so vital for coaches and teachers to be stressing to these student athletes and just students in general that now in today's world, this stuff can stay with you, and people will bring it out when it serves them best and might hurt you the most. So you have to be smart and careful, and there's a lot of great things about social media, but there's some things that aren't so great too, so you got to be careful.
Yeah, good advice.
Everybody, thanks for tuning in. And I want to say again, just reference. Hopefully, we're going to get him back on, but want to say congratulations to Mr. Kenny Seifert. He is going to be retiring from MSHSAA. going off on his own. And I told him before we come on, I go, you still got to come back on and talk to us, talk some baseball, man, and officiating and all that kind of stuff. And he said he would, so that's good.
Absolutely.
But congratulations, a career in sports. I was reading about that. I was listening to the podcast on Misha. I went on and I was listening to that, and so that's cool. I'm looking forward to you guys. You're starting the podcast on Misha and talking, and I think that's a great opportunity for more information. So congrats on that. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Good deal.
Congratulations.
Doug,
thanks.
As looking forward to it, man. Appreciate you gentlemen taking the time out of your day to come on and chat up with us. It is appreciated greatly. Really is.
Thanks, Kevin, and Kevin and Brian. I mean, thanks for everything. I always enjoy coming on here, and like I said, it's when I took this job, it's about communication. So anytime.
And I'll echo that.
Greatly.
Wishing Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's to all of you. And we feel the same about what you're doing with this podcast as you do with us being on it. So the feeling's mutual, and it's very much appreciated.
Outstanding. Kevin, as always, man, thanks for dropping the knowledge. Great questions today. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. If you like what we're doing, please help us out. If it's the first time, hit that subscribe button. If you've been watching, hit the subscribe button. Hit that dinger next to it, because that's what we do around here. We hit dingers. Chicks love the long ball, right? There you go. And so that'll get you all your notifications for upcoming episodes of the show. This is our last show. You guys are the grand finale for 2022, right? That's even bigger.
The right crew for it.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So we appreciate it. We'll see you all again in 2023. Happy holidays. Be safe. Take care. Have a great day in the Lord. All you pitchers, keep throwing strikes, and hitters, Kevin.
Hit them where they ain't. And Merry Christmas, everyone.
Good advice. We'll see you
Merry
all
Christmas.
next time.